Hello and welcome to Sunday Summary for the 15th Sunday of Ordinary Time. This is July 13th, 14th, 2019, and welcome to everybody. I just on a personal note, this was an exciting weekend for me. I had the wedding for my nephew and new niece-in-law, so congratulations to Joel and Peyton, Spain. They got married at St. Lawrence Center and at the St. Lawrence Campus Center there in the University of Kansas. So congratulations to them, and it was a great joy to celebrate with them this weekend. This weekend, we at the Sunday for the weekend readings, we had the readings from that really famous parable, the parable of the Good Samaritan, and I would say it's probably the second most popular of all the parables. The first probably being the prodigal son, followed by the Good Samaritan. I didn't preach much this weekend. I preached just at the Spanish Mass this weekend. We had Father Ashmore. It was his first weekend to do the homily because last weekend we had the missionary priest and he did a nice job, but he didn't have or Father Ashmore didn't have a chance to preach. Father Ashmore did the 8 o'clock and the 10 o'clock masses. And then Deacon Steve preaches at the two 5 o'clock masses. And we have 5 o'clock mass here shortly. And he did a very nice job as well, really good points, and I'm excited to kind of hear it again of what he had to offer about the Good Samaritan. As far as for me, I talked a little bit about the idea that I sometimes hear people say that I don't need to go to church, I don't need to believe in God to be a good person. I can be a good person on my own, and I don't need any of that religion stuff. And there's a certain amount of truth to that. Where Jesus says this parable of the Good Samaritan, where the people who should be good and faithful followers, we're all familiar with that story, right? The person gets thrown down on the ground and he gets robbed and beat up and everything, and a priest walks by and walks on the complete other side, and we have the Levite who walks by, which is kind of basically another type of priest, and he walks by. And finally, the Samaritan comes by, who should be an example of someone who should be a bad example, someone who does not live according to the Jewish faith, is not part of the not part of the covenant, and they live their faith in a different way. But he provides the example of what it means to be a neighbor. So the Samaritan provides this opportunity of what it looks like to be a neighbor, and the person who originally asked the question of what must I do to inherit eternal life, and Jesus says, you know the law, tell me what it says, and it says love God and love neighbor. And Jesus says, yeah, you do that and you will live. And the person asks further, well, what do I need to do to be, who is my neighbor? That's what he asks, and Jesus tells this parable. So Jesus expands the idea of what it means to be a neighbor and uses who should be a bad example, the Samaritan, as the positive example. But that does not excuse, it does not say that the first part of the commandment, to love God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, that's not negated. So can we be a good person? Yes, in some ways. In some ways, we can fulfill that second part of loving your neighbor as yourself without that religious dimension. That is true to a certain extent. But it does not go to say that you can't really be all of what God is calling you to be without this first part. But the sad thing is, what I was saying at the homily is, the sad thing is that many times we people who are Christians, who are Catholics, provide bad examples, and we should be providing stellar examples of what it means to live faithfully and loving our neighbor. And so sad, so often we get put to shame by others who may or may not have a religious background. So the opportunity is for us to rise up and to be who we say we are, and to not be like those bad examples that Jesus uses in the parable today of the priests and Levites. And if I might throw in bad examples of priests and bishops and whoever that we've seen today, right? Don't be a bad example. We've had too many examples of bad examples of Catholics and of Christians. Don't be that. Be better, right? So rise up. Father Ashmore was also sharing how we have this excessive love in our hearts, that we don't just do the minimum of what is asked of us for love, but we go the extra way, we go the extra mile, that we give an excess of love. That's how God does. That's so to how we should do with our neighbor. So today, as we hear this passage from the Good Samaritan, we are asked to consider who are our neighbors, and really no one's excluded. And are we being a good example, and we being that good neighbor to others? I hope that you have a blessed week, and I will see you this Tuesday for Tuesday Night Live if you tune into that. And if not, I will see you next week for Sunday Summary. Have a blessed Sunday and a blessed week. Yes, and